Welcome to another episode of the Village Boy Podcast. It is your host, Tres. On this edition, we're talking about the El Salvadorian that had been deported back to El Salvador and the refusal of the Trump administration to comply with the Supreme Court. But before we get into all of that, it was so interesting to see the Senator of Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, advocate passionately under the guise of due process, the defense of law, for somebody who is suspected of being a gang member. It was quite interesting to see how passionate this liberal Democrat was about this case. He actually flew out there, created a scene until they were able to set him to meet this guy. Americans, both on the left and on the right, pride themselves that America is a country of laws and America is a country of immigrants. America is a country of laws. True. America is a country of immigrants, a conversation for another day. Are we forgetting that America is a country of laws? What does that mean? America is a country of laws. It means that America has processes in place to ensure that people are heard and there is a due process that ensures before a decision is made. And so why the left is celebrating their gang member or suspected gang member, why the left is celebrating their suspected gang member, I knew for Chris this was a political stunt because Maryland has the largest concentration of El Salvadorians are in the DMV area. So I know that this was a political move for the Democrats. The Democrats don't do anything that does not involve buying a community over. This is a party that does everything based on what community can I win over, which community can I get on my side. So we're going to watch a short video here of the senator doing a rally, a campaign. And you can see the background is predominantly Hispanic looking folks. And I would put my money on there that they're El Salvadorians. And this was the whole thing behind this mission for this particular guy. So let's go ahead and play this short clip here and see this campaign rally.
It's good to be home.
And also there's a sign that says this is what leadership looks like. Right? So you could see it's a political campaign rally because they're buying the loyalty of these people that I'm fighting for one of yours. And if I'm fighting for one of yours, you have to be on my team. We're not going to offer you anything, but you have to be able to vote for us. This rally was held in Dallas at the airport. And this is what I want you all to know about the Democrat Party. Like I said, they don't do anything that does not involve winning over people like this, a community to be loyal to them for ages to come. Let's listen in.
Now we need to end the illegal abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and bring him home too.
This is a man that has traveled to El Salvador to meet with the deportee, suspected gang member, and he doesn't even know his name. Abrego, it's Abrego. He couldn't even pronounce his name. You would have thought he would have studied the file, know the person, and had the knowledge about everything that he was talking about. But obviously, that's not the case.
We're joined by his wife, Jennifer, by his mother.
He doesn't even know who Jennifer is, where Jennifer is. He's turning on the wrong side, trying to figure out Jennifer. But like I said, it's all a show, but we keep listening in.
Cecilia, by his brother, Cesar, and thank all of the rest of you who are joining us in solidarity with the Constitution and Kilmar. Look, I'm a little sleep deprived, and I want to be as clear as possible about what this is about and what it's not about. So I'm going to read the remarks that I wrote on the plane ride home. As the federal courts have said, we need to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia home to protect his constitutional rights to due process.
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of our conversation today, right? Due process was what he ended that speech with. It's very important because America is a country of laws. We cannot have a country where we are no longer law-abiding citizens. We're no longer custodians of the law, because that's the foundation on which this country rests. Laws. So what is due process? For the average MAGA person, Republican, what is due process? Right? What is due process? And how did this guy get deported? There's so many questions that I could not answer. Because from my understanding, I'm not a lawyer. From my understanding, I would think that this is how this process works. Somebody comes through the border, goes through the system. The courts accept or reject you. Once the court rejects you, you are put on a deportation list. Now, they have processes where you can appeal, but let's say you're clearly on a deportation list, and then that list is handed over to ICE. ICE goes about and picks those people on the list and deports them. That's my conception of how all of this works. But was I surprised today that that's not how it works, actually? That's not how it works. Matter of fact, ICE is like this random organization. It just has authority to deport people on no basis. Basically, the way ICE works is that Homeland Security can tell them that, hey, this person over there can get deported. Local law enforcement can call somebody and say, hey, this person is undocumented, and the person gets deported. A wife who's upset with her husband, friends who are fighting, and somebody's upset, somebody's bitter about something, but you know that this person is undocumented, you can basically call ICE and have that person deported. And that's not the way it should work. ICE should be the deportation organization, true, but ICE should have a process of removal. Once the courts have established who needs to be removed, that is the list that ICE is going by. So it's not random. There are no mistakes. You are going by a document that the courts have given you, that this person is on a deportation list and they're going to be removed at X time period. That's the only way ICE should function. No other ways, because what is going to happen is that people are going to be calling ICE to report on people they don't like, so they get deported because I know your immigration or deportation status, and I can report you to ICE because ICE has put out their numbers to call them. But that's not a system that follows the law. That's not due process. Are we now becoming courts of public opinions? Do we respect the court's decisions? You have to follow the law. Do we want the opinions on social media to override what the courts have decided? Either we have a system of law and order, or we don't have a system of law and order. It can't be selective. It can't be both. You may not like the outcome, but it is what the law says. This man, everybody is showing gang signs. Gang relationships in America is as old as this country is. There are former Klansmen that have tattoos on their bodies as Klansmen that are no longer Klansmen. They've given up that lifestyle. They've apologized. And they've not just taken up the tattoo. So whenever you see that tattoo on that person, does that immediately say this person is a gang member, is a Klansman, even though they may have changed their life? Looking at somebody who has a tattoo that may associate him with a gang, he could be He could be part of the gang. He could be a former member of the gang, and he just never took off the tattoos. They have no evidence that he was an active participant in the gang. We don't have that information. We only know that he has a gang tattoo on his body. That notwithstanding, that's a man that has a kid born in America, assuming he was a gang member. His child was born on US soil. That's an American child. Assuming that this man was in the MS-13 gang. And it's a violent gang. I remember back in 2000, 2001 in Virginia, they were talking of how violent MS-13 gang is. I was a young man back then. This gang was a violent gang causing ravage in the Fairfax County, Tyson Corner, Springfield area, parts of Maryland, Langley Park in Maryland. I know a little bit of that area. I grew up there. This gang was a violent gang in that part of the country. So it's not something new. Kids have been born on American soil that are Americans that have initiated that gang. What would happen if you caught an American that is a MS-13 with all the tattoos? Are you just going to deport them to El Salvador? So when you are showing MS-13 signs, what is that supposed to mean? That once you're an MS-13 member, we're going to deport you? What about the Americans? Are they going to lose their citizenship and get deported? Is that what is reserved for gang members now? Because there are black gangs, there are white gangs, there's all kinds of gangs in America. Indian gangs, all kinds of gangs in America. Chinese gangs, Japanese gangs. So the issue is not the gang. So people putting out his MS-13, his MS-13 has been in this country for a very, very long time. That child of his would probably be initiated in the gang as well. An American citizen. He's going to get tatted all over. So saying that he's a gang member doesn't mean anything. What means something is due process and the functionality of ICE. And we've established here that ICE is a broken organization. ICE is working arbitrarily. I asked ChatGPT, I was like, hey, how does this due process thing work? I asked, how does ICE determine who needs to be deported? Because normally the documents need to go from the courts, the USCIS, say these are the people that have gone through the system, and the courts have established, or USCIS has denied them, because you go through the system, USCIS denies you, and then you get sent over to the courts. The courts deny you and then begins deportation proceedings. Once deportation proceedings have begun for you, those documents get transferred to ICE. ICE then begins to deport you out of the country. ICE knows where you live. ICE knows where you work. It could take time based on your circumstances. Everybody's case is different. So ICE would know who needs to be deported immediately based on the severity of why they need to be removed from the country. Who needs to be deported last because maybe some other evidence needs to come in, but they haven't come in, but right now they are on deportation proceedings and the courts can change their minds. So ICE looks at whether someone is undocumented, entered the country without inspection, or overstayed their visa. How does ICE have this information? How does ICE know that somebody overstayed their visa? What database says that nobody's working around here with a passport with an overstayed visa? How do you know? So everybody you meet in the streets, you're going to be asking, oh, I need to see your US passport status. The vast majority of Americans don't have their birth certificates with them, don't even have a passport. How are you going to know that this person is an American citizen? So you're just going to be deporting people that don't have documents on them? How does ICE know that somebody entered here or has overstayed their visa? That should not be ICE's job. That should be USCIS's job because they issued the visa at the consulate. So they would know that this visa for this person has overstayed because we gave you a 6 months visa, we gave you a 1 year visa, and we don't have any record of you leaving the country. Because Customs and Border Patrol would be able to determine that this person came in and has not left. We've not seen a stamp of him leaving the country. So boom. Now, if they want that person deported, they can round up the documents and send the documents over to ICE. ICE would have the document and know that. But I don't see it in this answer. And I'll share this so that we're all on the same page. A legal immigrant who has violated certain laws or conditions of their status. Okay. Again, that is something that USCIS determines that Marco Rubio's Department of State, which USCIS is under, determines that you have violated, like those with the green cards or citizens can lose their citizenships. They sure can if they're part of a terrorist organization. But let's say somebody with a green card or asylum seeker, they determine that they hand that over to ICE, and all ICE does is deport the person. ICE cannot be a police officer. ICE cannot be the sheriff. ICE cannot be interpreting the law. ICE cannot be determining who's staying or going. ICE is just the person that goes and takes you and says, yes, today's your day that you need to go. That's it. ICE should be like the bonds people. They know whose car they need to repossess because the company has sent that document over to them. That is exactly how ICE is. ICE is the repossession guy, the repo man. ICE is a repo organization. If you want to understand how ICE should operate, it's a repo. Think about the repo guy coming to repo your car, and then it was a mistake where you've been paying your car on time. That's what ICE is doing right now. Decides who to deport based on a combination of immigration law, enforcement priorities, and individual case circumstances. So ICE is determining. ICE should not determine who needs to be deported. That should not be in the purview of ICE. That should be in the purview of the courts. The courts are hearing the cases, and then the courts determine that this person is a risk to this country. This person needs to be deported. Once that is established, you hand it over to the repo man, and the repo man goes and repossesses the person. And in this case, ICE goes and gets the person and deports them. That is how ICE should function. And we are seeing the chaos of ICE functioning as another branch of the courts. They determine, because it says, decides who to deport. So ICE can decide if we're going to deport you or not going to deport you. ICE can bypass the courts. This has to be crazy in a country that prides itself as a law-abiding country, a country of laws and a country of immigrants. This is crazy. But let's keep on reading. Criminal history, enforcement priorities. ICE doesn't pursue every deportable person equally, like I said, and they shouldn't, because everybody's case is different. There are people that need to leave immediately, and there are people that need more time. They need more evidence, but they're on deportation. Once they have that evidence, the courts might overturn. But ICE cannot be a body of decision making because it would be biased. See how what's his name, Tom Holman. See how aggressive and prejudice, borderline prejudice he could be. You can't have that kind of person with that kind of ambition to kick people out arbitrarily be making decisions. He should just enforce what the courts have decided. That's it. If he was enforcing the courts, sir, this is the document right here. You need to go. You need to go right now. Bam, bam, bam. Chap, chap. Get your stuff. Matter of fact, don't get any stuff. We're getting you out. The court, we're showing you the documents. Yes, sir. On this day, you went to court. The court determined that you need to hear. Yeah, ma'am. Boom, boom, boom. We're taking you out. But I can't be in my house and ICE bashes in and I don't even know they're not presenting me with any court documents. It's their decision, their discretion when they're deporting me. How does that work? How does this work for anybody? It doesn't make sense, right? Final orders of removal. If someone has gone through immigration courts and has a final order of removal but hasn't left the US, ICE can arrest. This should be the critical function of ICE right there. This should be it. The final order of removal. The courts determine that you get removed. This is the person, this is the address that they've provided. We know that they're here. Boom, we go get them. Final order of removal. ICE ICE acts on decisions made by immigration judges. If a judge orders deportation and appeals are exhausted or waived, ICE will proceed with removal. Exactly. Another function. This should be it. There should never be ICE ICE is deciding. ICE should never decide. ICE should not have the authority to make decisions on who gets deported, because the ability of being biased would play in. Maybe brown and black people will get deported at a disadvantage with Eastern Europeans that are also a vast majority of illegals across this country. But it's never talked about. Eastern Europeans, white people are also vastly illegal in America. Do we ever see that deportation stats? No. So it's possible for ICE to be biased racially if they are making decisions. They should just be the enforcer of the court's decision, the repo man of the courts. Now, we talked about due process. It's a constitutional right to have due process. Every non-citizens have rights under the Fifth Amendment, which guarantees due process before the government can deprive someone of life, liberty, or property. People can't just be deported arbitrarily, which is what ICE is doing right now, deporting people arbitrarily. They must be given notice, a hearing, and a chance to defend themselves. That's due process. And so the question in all of this craziness is not whether the person was a gang member, is how violent. That's not the issue. The issue is by the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment explicitly demands that they have due process. They must be heard in front of a judge. The judge is going to determine whether they stay or they are removed. So the question is, has Abrego Garcia seen a judge? Has he been in front of the judge, of any judge? And what was the decision from that judge? Because there are only two outcomes here. Has he been in front of a judge? Did a judge give this issuance that he should be deported, put on a deportation list so ICE can get him out of the country? That's the only question that we need to know. That's the only question that we need to answer. Did he have access to a judge? And did a judge determine that he had overstayed his visa, he had come in here illegally, he had no grounds to be in America and needs to be removed? That document handed over to ICE. ICE went over to his residency, picked him up, and shipped him out to El Salvador. The courts have to decide that. We cannot have a Wild Wild West ICE, which is what ICE is right now, an unregulated institution. ICE should simply be the repo man. ICE duty should simply be the repo man. I need somebody removed. That's your job. Go get them, send them out. You're not thinking, you're not asking questions, you're not deciding whether it's a pregnant woman. Your job is to remove this individual from the country. And this is the process of how you're going to remove them. That should be ICE's job. Very limited, very focused, very tailored, and very organized. Clean, in, out, boom, boom, we're in, we're out. ICE should not be deciding, making decision. ICE is not giving a person a notice to appear, which outlines the charges against them, the reasons the government believes they're deportable, the date, the location of their immigration court hearing. This should not be ICE's job. Once you've gone through the courts and the courts have determined that you need to be deported by X period of time, that documentation should be sent to you and ICE. You should be notified by the courts that you are going to be deported, and ICE is going to contact you to let you know you can self-deport, or they're going to come and X at the point, because maybe they're too busy right now. Their schedule is booked, so they might come down and visit you in 3 months, but they can give you heads up. So self-deport, or we're going to come. Now, if we come and you're not around and then you become a fugitive, you become a criminal in the country. Easy peasy. Not complicated. I don't know why this process is complicated. I have no idea why this process is complicated. But what ICE is doing right now is complication. Before someone is deported, they usually get a hearing in front of an immigration judge. Perfect. That's what should happen. Unless they waive it or are subject to expedited removal. If they're some type of criminal, then we don't have time to go through deportation. We don't have time to go through a court. You're on a terror watch list and we find you in America now. You're not going through that. We're sending you back out. I think the 1951 and Refugee Convention that determines that once you seek asylum in any country, you should stay in that country, protects refugees from being returned to countries where they risk being persecuted. Let's say this Abrego Garcia guy. Let's play devil's advocate here. He was a former gang member in El Salvador and he's running from being a gang member and he's in America. And he had made the case for an asylum that he fears for his life in El Salvador because they're gonna take him out. America has a right and a duty to listen to him and establish if that fear is credible or BS. That's the job of the courts and the immigration offices to determine if that fear is a credible fear, he has a reasonable fear of his life, and we can't send him back because they're going to kill him. I think it's a refugee convention, but I could Google it, but it's not going to be on this show. I could correct myself much later, but it's a convention that binds the U.S. to ensure that people seeking asylum have a hearing. The question should be, did Abrego Garcia see an immigration judge and was he subject to removal? That's what I asked ChatGPT. But ChatGPT gave me Wikipedia. I was like, no, sir, ma'am, whatever you are, I need something more credible. I don't need Wiki. So he gave me a New York Times magazine. It's liberal. There's some other KPTV. I don't know these people. 14 News. Let's look at the New York Times. Still slightly credible. The New York Magazine. I don't know what that is. The federal courts, including the Supreme Court, ruled that Abrego Garcia's deportation was illegal and ordered the government to facilitate his return to the U.S. A country of law and order does not argue. We don't argue. That's not something the courts have decided. You cannot be law and order and you are fighting the law. It doesn't make sense, guys. Come on. It does not make sense. You don't have to agree with the man's lifestyle. You don't have to. You could hate his lifestyle. You could hate him. The law is the law. You cannot start this proceedings of opposing the courts. That is tyranny. And that's what we're getting into. The courts have decided that he comes back. Let him come back because the courts have decided. There is nowhere in the Constitution that says the executive supersedes the courts. And America is a country of laws. America is a country of immigrants. Forget the immigrants part, but America is a country of laws. The laws part is the first thing about Americans that makes us different from Russia, from China, because this would have played out differently if we were China. So either we are becoming the Chinese, either we are becoming North Korea, either we are becoming a country where there's no access to legal opportunities, or we are America, where you have access. You go through the courts. So federal courts, including the Supreme Court, ruled that Abrego Garcia's deportation was illegal and ordered the government to facilitate his return to the U.S. However, the administration has resisted these orders, leading to a standoff between the executive and judiciary branch. Chief Judge J. Harvey Wilkinson III criticized the administration's refusal to comply, warning of erosion of constitutional protection and due process. This does not concern me. Let's look at Abrego's summary. In 2019, Mr. Abrego Garcia was granted protection from deportation by an immigration judge. So all that was said, he could not be deported out of America under the guise of him being an illegal. This in 2019 was established. He had the right to be in America. Again, you don't have to like this, but these are the facts. Alternatively, just come with documents from a judge that said this man needed to be deported. He was subject for removal. A judge needs to give this order to ICE. As we have established, he was the country illegally. He made his case. His case was denied and he needs to be removed. He cannot be here. But in 2019, he was granted protection from deportation by an immigration judge. Not a temporal protective status from the radical Joe Biden. Confused Joe Biden. He never had an executive protective status from Joe Biden. He had granted protection from deportation by an immigration judge. That's what he had.
In 2025, he was illegally deported
To El Salvador by ICE, bypassing legal procedures. Exactly what I was saying. We have ICE running out here as judge, jury, and executioner, which should never happen. ICE should not have this type of powers. Congress needs to look at regulating ICE to be just the repo man to ensure that their only job is sending people out of America, deporting those that have been established by a court of law, an immigration judge that needs to leave. That should be ICE's only job. And there's plenty, about 11 million people to deport. That's a lot of work for ICE to do. But they should not be in the business of using their brains. They are not competent to determine who needs to stay and who needs to go. They have zero competency in that domain. The judges do. Either you take it from the judges, we don't have no immigration court, and ICE would be the one deciding who stays and who goes. Let's see how that works out. Either we are done with immigration judges or ICE runs the show. Either we're done with USCIS interviews, let ICE be the only body doing immigration processing. They receive you, look at you, determine if they like you, if they want you to stay. And we see the disparage because ICE, for me, is a very biased and prejudiced organization. That's what I'm seeing they're doing right now. I don't see a mass deportation to Europe. Besides the point, in 2025, illegally deported to El Salvador by ICE, bypassing legal procedures. Right here, they bypassed legal procedures, and is what I say ICE should not be doing. Don't give them this kind of power as Congress. Congress has failed the people. Judicial orders, multiple court rulings, including from the Supreme Court, have declared the deportation unlawful and ordered his return. Current status: the administration has yet to comply with court orders, resulting in ongoing legal and constitutional dispute. So that's what you have. So the village boy is going to give a score. So I give an F to the Trump administration for not following due process. The law is the law. I could care less what you feel or how you feel about the law. The law is the law. That's it. The law is the law. Either we're a law-abiding country or we're North Korea, we're Russia, we're China, where people don't have rights. Either we're those. You got to pick your poison. You got to pick your battles. You can't be America and be China and North Korea at the same time. You cannot be both. So the Trump administration gets an F. You know what? Matter of fact, I take that back. I'm going to give double scores, F plus, the highest failure ranking for the Village Boy podcast, to both Trump and ICE because they are overdoing. Whether it's by their choice or it's by the failure of Congress, I really don't care. But they're doing too much. So they have an F plus, and the Trump administration has an F plus. Next up, Congress has an F minus because Congress needs to regulate ICE and make sure ICE is just a repo man, but in this case, a deportation man. When you see ICE, it's because you know, because you've received your papers of deportation, ICE has exactly the same documentation like you have. So you know you got to go, and ICE knows you have to go. Congress has failed in ensuring that that should be the policy that works. And I can come to Congress anytime and help them draft that policy because apparently they don't know what they're doing. So I give Congress an F minus. The Trump administration and ICE have F minuses. Trump administration and ICE have F minus. Like I said, either America is a country of laws or America is no longer a country of laws. Sharing over his MS-13 status, I have witnessed the carnage, the barbarism of the MS-13 gang when I used to live in the DMV area. I have witnessed it firsthand, so I know how atrocious this gang is. I'm not one to side with them or support them, but the law is the law. Either we're a law-abiding country or we've reduced ourselves to third world countries like North Korea. We can't call North Korea out no more. We cannot call China out no more because we've reduced ourselves to their level. So either we're that or we follow the law. You should be able to make a case to the court why you think that this man should be deported. That should be what Pam Bondi is working on, making a case. The Secretary of State, the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, and all these people should be making a case to the court why they think the safety of America is guaranteed with this man out of America. Not people cannot be in America when they're running away from persecutions and they're scared to be in America. This is not that country. We need to understand that in 4 years, Donald Trump is going to go. And we're going to be left with a country that we either have to rebuild or relationships that we need to rebuild. We cannot lose our minds. We cannot lose our focus. We cannot lose our sense of humanity because we have borders. Yes, Joe Biden let the borders open and 25 million, 14 million, how many ever million people ran into the country. But they're in the country now. Due process. They're in America. Once you're in America, American laws apply. Once you're in America, we cannot apply North Korean laws to you. We cannot become that country. We can deport these people. It's the cost that all of us are going to pay because the Democrat Party let this happen. That's why you shouldn't vote for them, but you don't become a barbaric party by just indiscriminately sending people out of the country. Because in the next election, it's going to rally so many more people to vote you out of office. I don't know why Republicans never get this. Well, you think you're going to stay in office forever? Nobody's going to vote you out? You're creating more hate than love. You could look at somebody and be like, oh, you got in the country illegally. We have laws. Okay, now that you're here, this is the process. You're going to go through the court system. The court is going to determine if you are staying or if you're leaving. Maybe the court should be usher on the conditions why you came. And they can deport more people, so the vast majority of Americans are happy that the borders are secure. To finalize, the Trump administration gets an F+, ICE gets an F+, Congress gets an F, and that Senator Chris Van Hollen, who's used this as a political campaign, gets an F too as well. Republicans should know better. And if you insist on this, then we need to stop talking about law and order. We just need to stop. Let's round it up. It's been an amazing show. Like and subscribe, and see you on the other side. Good night.